experience of sudden silence, when someone just disappears from your life, and the fascinating psychology behind exactly why it happens. Because whether it's a friend, a coworker, or a romantic partner, almost everyone has been touched by this. So we're going to unpack what is actually going on in the mind of the person who vanishes, and just as importantly, what happens to the mind of the person they leave behind.
It's a simple question, right? Why do people just disappear? I mean, if you've ever been on the receiving end of this, you know for sure that the absolute worst part isn't necessarily even losing the person. It's the ambiguity. It's that total, agonizing lack of an ending. Your brain is just desperately trying to solve a puzzle, but half the pieces are missing. So let's look at the science and the psychology driving this super painful human behavior.
Section 1, the vanishing act. All right, let's peel back the very first layer here of what happens when someone simply ceases to exist in your world. To start, we've got to define our terms. Based on the framework by psychologist R.J. Starr, ghosting is the act of cutting off all communication without any explanation. It's an abrupt, completely unilateral decision. No text, no call, just silence. And the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that it is fundamentally rooted in emotional avoidance. The person doing the ghosting is sidestepping a situation that just feels like too much for them. But of course, that total lack of closure is exactly what makes it so uniquely agonizing for you. And, if you've ever felt like you were actually going crazy because of how much being ghosted hurts, well, science totally validates your experience. According to a landmark study by Eisenberger, social rejection actually activates the exact same neural pathways in your brain as a physical injury. Literally. So when that person goes completely silent on you, your brain processes that the exact same way it processes a physical punch to the gut. It's not just some emotional overreaction, it is a profound, hardwired neurological response. Section 2, the psychology of avoidance.
Okay, so we know why it hurts the person left behind, but let's actually take an empathetic pivot for a second and look inside the mind of the ghoster. Often, believe it or not, this isn't pure malice. It's what we call a regulatory failure, and it's driven by cognitive dissonance. See, ghosters usually don't see themselves as bad people. They think of themselves as kind, but ghosting is a really unkind act. This creates massive mental discomfort for them. So how do they fix it? They rationalize. They tell themselves things like, oh, they probably didn't care that much anyway, or I'm actually doing them a huge favor by not dragging this whole thing out. They literally use silence to protect their own identity just so they don't have to feel like the bad guy. And get this avoidance can be deeply, deeply wired into us. There's actually a documented clinical overlap between avoidant and schizoid personality traits. People with these profiles experience severe hypersensitivity to social interaction. For them, emotional closeness doesn't feel safe. It feels suffocating. Research even points to a shared genetic risk factor, specifically the ANKK1 gene polymorphism, linking these exact behaviors. It just goes to show how profoundly rooted conflict avoidance and the instinct to emotionally withdraw can really be. For them, running away is a structural response to an emotional demand that they simply cannot meet. Section 3, the secret need to belong. Now, here is where the plot really thickens, especially when we talk about people who explicitly claim they just don't need anyone. You've probably met people like this. They have what's called a dismissive avoidant attachment style. These are the folks who loudly, proudly claim to be perfectly comfortable without close relationships. They strive for this extreme independence, and they will explicitly push back against emotional attachments. They're practically shouting, I don't care what anybody thinks. But do they really? Well, listen to this fascinating finding from a study by Carvalho and Gabriel. The study noted, high dismissive participants reported experiencing higher than average levels of positive affect and state self-esteem after learning that other participants accepted them. Okay, this is the big twist. Even the most dismissive, avoidant people secretly crave connection. When they finally get positive social feedback, their self-esteem actually skyrockets way more than the average person's does. This proves they don't lack a need to belong at all. They are actually just terrified of potential rejection, so they run away before they have a chance to get hurt. Section 4, the INFJ door slam. So we've talked a lot about running away out of fear, but let's look at the flip side of the coin here. Sometimes disappearing isn't about avoidance at all. It's about self-preservation. And that brings us to a phenomenon popularized in personality psychology called the INFJ door slam. This is the act of completely shutting someone out, but it only happens after a massive breaking point. Unlike a ghoster who runs for the hills at the very first sign of emotional depth, a person doing a door slam has usually poured a tremendous amount of energy into that relationship. They've tolerated a lot.
But after a severe breach of trust or just an exhausting one-way energy drain, they hit empty. The door slams shut, and let me tell you, it is very, very hard to reopen.
Section 5. Avoiding versus protecting.
Let's break down this duality of disappearing, because honestly, all silence is not created equal. We absolutely have to contrast ghosting, which is escaping healthy emotional discomfort, with cutting off, which is escaping actual toxicity. One is a complete failure to communicate. The other one, which is often called going no contact, is a completely valid, powerful stance against abuse, manipulation, or a partner who continuously disrespects your boundaries.
To make this crystal clear, ghosting is about avoiding normal, everyday healthy conversations. It delays pain and leaves loose ends everywhere simply because the person lacks relational capacity. Cutting off, on the other hand, enforces boundaries. It is a necessary reaction to repeated, toxic mistreatment. If someone is emotionally abusive, if they're gaslighting you, or just draining you dry, walking away in silence isn't some lack of maturity. In those cases, it's literally a healthy act of self-love and survival.
Section 6. Finding your own closure.
So, if you're the one left standing in the silence, how do you actually move forward? The absolutely crucial thing you have to know is this: closure comes from within. You have to empower yourself by reframing how you think about this. Just remember everything we've learned today. Someone else's decision to ghost you is a reflection of their own structural inability to handle emotional discomfort. It's their regulatory failure. It is absolutely 100% not a reflection of your worth as a human being.
So here are 3 real, actionable recovery steps you can take. Step 1, acknowledge the silence as their answer. No answer is an answer. They made a choice. Step 2, resist the urge to seek closure from them. Reaching out over and over to someone who has literally shown you they can't communicate, that's just going to cause you more pain. And step 3, focus forward on healthier relationships. Go find your tribe. Surround yourself with people who actually have the emotional capacity to show up and be present with you.
I want to leave you with a final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. Think about your own communication habits for a second. When you distance yourself from others, are you using silence as a shield against difficult emotions that you're just afraid to face? Or are you using it as a necessary tool to protect yourself from harm? Because really understanding that distinction changes absolutely everything about how we connect with each other. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I genuinely hope you leave today with a much deeper understanding of the wildly fascinating psychology behind the disappearing act.